There's no consensus to this day on what the precise nature of knowledge is, but I guess that the nearest we have to a generally accepted view is actually close to what you've just said, namely that it's perception, something that's based on direct experience, plus our capacity to provide justification for it.
Ah, you've now produced an interesting solution to the problem we're left with at the end of the dialogue, namely all of those answers have been knocked down, taken separately. Socrates has refuted the thesis that knowledge is perception, refuted the thesis that knowledge is true judgment, refuted the thesis that true judgment is that knowledge is true judgment with an account, and now you're suggesting that perhaps we could get a definition of knowledge by somehow putting all the elements of the three separate definitions together into one, and thereby making a theory of knowledge around a definition of knowledge. That would be a highly suitable response to this kind of dialogue, namely suggesting a definition of one's own in terms of what one's learnt from the dialogue.
We must, I think, bring this discussion to a close now, but before we do, I would like to ask you something about the influence of all this, because Plato must be either the most influential or one of the 2 or 3 most influential philosophers there have ever been. Can you say a little, if only briefly, about what the main lines of this influence have been?
I think it's important to remember there were 2 philosophies opposed to materialism in the ancient world. There was materialism in the form of the atomic doctrine held by Democritus and Epicurus, and there were the anti-materialist philosophers, Plato and Aristotle, both of whom are opposed to the suggestion that everything, life, order, mind, civilization, art, nature, can all be explained as the outcome of the movements of particles of matter, subject just to the laws of motion and their own nature. Now, Aristotelianism is opposed to that sort of materialism, but Aristotelianism carries the war so far into the enemy camp that it's actually very hard to reconcile the Aristotelian philosophy with the modern scientific enterprise, which has a lot about atoms and the movements of particles of matter and all that sort of stuff. And indeed, I think it was no accident that when the modern scientific enterprise got going, it got going by throwing away the Aristotelianism, which had so dominated the Middle Ages. But Platonism is much easier to reconcile with the modern scientific enterprise, and that's why I think, since the Renaissance really, Platonism has lived on after the death of Aristotelianism, because that's a philosophy which you can use or be influenced by if you're seeking to show how scientific and spiritual values can be reconciled, if you want to do justice to the complexities of things where materialism is giving just too simple and simplistic a story.
And there's something very contemporary to us, isn't there, about the fact that Plato's cosmology and Plato's science is based on an essentially mathematical physics.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Professor Burnyeat.